you. Okay, so we'll call the meeting to order, and I'm going to pass it over to you and proceed with the school improvement presentation.
Okay, so this evening, we're going to hear from our team, and I'll have Donna introduce our team to you and comprehensive school improvement plan presentations.
All right, so last time we were together, we talked about the state and district data. And tonight you're going to hear about classroom and swing data, tier 1 support. And so we're going to start with Helen Haller and Sarah Decker.
So I just want you to know that we all, as we're sitting here, we're like, you guys are too far away. It would have been a much more intimate situation to just all sit together. So there you go. All right, my first one. My name is Sarah Decker, and I am the assistant principal at Helen Haller. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for the time and effort that you guys put in to make sure that our kids have the best education possible. I know that it can be a thankless job, and I just want you to know that I appreciate you. A little bit about Helen Haller this year. We have approximately 525 kids from preschool up to 5th grade. We have a staff of well-trained teachers who are really enthusiastic about teaching with a whole child approach. Our core curriculum is well vetted and strong. Our grade level teams share common planning time, which allows for increased opportunities for them to collaborate around curriculum and kids. We reallocated our para staff this year in an effort to provide a more consistent adult presence for our students throughout the day. And this change exemplified what an amazing para educator staff we have. They have flexed and stepped up to support when and where they were needed. Last year we had many of our students were reacclimatizing to school. We also had students who were experiencing school for the first time. In both of those groups, all of them were learning how to adjust to being in a public setting of structure. We told our staff last year to teach, but we also gave them the discretion to take the time needed to teach those soft skills and get their kids back feeling safe and welcomed in school. Because we know that kids' learning is maximized when they feel safe and welcomed. This spring, we saw growth in our students' data scores in math and ELA across the board, both with our internal testing and our SBA testing, which is great. However, in making the growth, the data showed that the increases were not significant in most cases. And while they were much higher than the previous year, they were much lower than they have been consistently. So with the hope to accelerate the amount of academic growth for our students, we implemented a quarterly PLC cycle for each grade band this year as one of our school-wide goals. During each cycle, the team will collaborate their work and expectations around a power standard that they have identified through the analyzing of grade level data, such as number sense in math or vocabulary in ELA, both of which have been identified as areas of concerns in most grades. The teams will consistently meet to determine how they will teach and assess that skill, what they will do if the kids don't get it, and what they will do when the kids do get it. The principal and I will attend to monitor progress of these cycles and support as needed. And looking at Helen Haller's SMART goals, it was decided to use the MAPS benchmark assessments as our data point to measure growth. In math, our SMART goal states that all students will demonstrate 15% increase in their math maps from fall to spring assessment. While we have a strong curriculum in Eureka, last year we saw in the data that our kids had large gaps in learning, and we wanted to figure out how we could support higher levels of growth in that area. A math MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support team was created, and they spent the whole year developing a framework of MTSS intervention program. The system was modeled after our successful reading win system. Our math win consists of 30-minute math groups at the students just like right level that meet 3 times a week. Staff received training in September on the Eureka Equip platform, and we began to implement math win in mid-October. The teachers, math specialists, and grade pairs use Eureka Math Extension, the Eureka Equip, to pre-assess for the upcoming module and provide lessons that will front load the necessary skills needed to be successful in that upcoming math module. We believe that with this dedicated win time, intentional PLC time devoted to addressing power standards and teaching Eureka with rigor and fidelity, we will be able to improve all student outcomes and increase the number of students reaching proficiency in math. Moving on to ELA. The curriculum used for ELA is highly aligned with the Common Core standards. Additionally, our students receive What I Need win time 4 days a week. We use a reading intervention program 95% during that time to specifically provide differentiated supports based on data gathered through a processing of progress monitoring cycle, The grade level teachers work closely with our reading specialists to analyze the data collected through this 95% curriculum and Acadians to determine groupings based on skills. Progress monitoring and regrouping of students based on their skill mastery happens on a 3-week cycle. We will continue to use these two methods as our primary means to teach reading in ELA. As I mentioned earlier, the grade bands will be working in PLCs, analyzing data to collaborate on which power standards will leverage the highest outcomes for students. Our SMART goal for ELA states that all students will demonstrate a 15% increase in their ELA maps from fall to spring assessment. We believe that our students will be able to achieve this goal with a strengthening of pacing and recalibration of the resources we currently use, and with intentional collaboration in PLC work. Finally, I'd like to address the culture at Helen Haller. With a strong foundation of culture where students and staff feel a sense of belonging and value in the community, we know that students have a higher likelihood of meeting their academic goals. With that in mind, we've taken the following steps to improve the culture and climate at Helen Haller. As I mentioned earlier, we reallocated our Paris staff to provide more consistent grade level support for the kids throughout the day. We implemented 20-minute daily class meetings for SEL and relationship building, which include the use of the Character Strong curriculum to help our children build their 9 essential character traits. Our whole staff meets monthly on a late start Monday to discuss our building-wide book study of Onward, with the purpose being to cultivate community, build emotional resiliency and efficacy. We have a staff building-wide goal of increasing family and community engagement. We're working with our staff to find new ways to encourage two-way partnerships with families around their students, including the addition of a language line to remove language barriers with our families. We are also partnering with our PTO to host 2 family engagement nights to increase the school and family partnership around learning, and 3 family fun nights throughout the year. And with that in mind, I would like to thank you for your time, and I am happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Question.
Capital Star by common planning times. I think that's really important. How's that working? Is it?
So when Christy Queen and I came on last year, we met with all the staff and we said, what is precious and must be kept? What would you like to, what's working well, hits, misses, and next time wishes. And the hits was hands down the common planning time. So I am not quite sure when that came into play, but it was in play before we came. And it's something that our staff really, really values. So
How often or when?
So they have common planning time every day. Our specialist schedule is built so that the grade bands have their planning time when our kids see the specialist. Our expectation is they meet at least once a week as a grade level team to collaborate. Yeah.
You mentioned that you used the word swing, and I saw that in the documents. There was something about a swing between teachers in terms of scores. Could you explain what that means?
Yes. So in our grade band teachers, so we have 4 grade band teachers. So the swing data would be the score between the teacher's class that scored the lowest and the class that scored the highest. So that gap there is something that we're hoping that our PLC time will help strengthen, where we can say, this is working here, maybe we can collaborate to help this person pull up this
Sort of
Yep.
teamwork to build this.
teamwork. There you go.
Make the swing less.
Yes, yes, that's the goal. Anything else?
Questions?
Well, thank you for making that fairly painless. And with that, I'm going to pass you on to Jennifer Lopez, principal at Rainbow.
I am Jennifer Lopez, the principal at Grable. So Tracy, will you have our split? Okay, that way you can glance at data. I know that you have received these ahead of time, and so you've likely had a chance to take a look at the data and things. So I'm going to touch a little bit on our data tonight, and then I'll focus most of our time on our goals because we have quite a few that we're going to be working on. The goals that we have this year, some of them hard carry forwards, goals from last year, things that we knew coming back from online and hybrid and remote learning and things that they were imperative to help our students succeed. And we saw a lot of success and growth with the last school year and knew that they were things to continue. So I'll touch on some of those tonight, the things that we're continuing on and carrying forward, and also talk to you a bit about our new goals. So we are really excited to share that all of our SBA scores this last spring in every single grade level were higher than the state average, which was a really big deal to us because we knew that all kids have struggled through this time, and it was so important to us to find ways to support kids to help make sure that those gaps that they had during these different missed experiences were things that we could address and help them achieve so that when it came to being ready and prepared for the next grade level, they had their footing underneath of them. And so we were just really excited when we got our data back to see that all areas they were above the state for all grades. In looking at our internal accountability data, specifically Acadians, can you pull up that one, Tracy? It's on the internal page. I think in like 3 or 4 more. This to me is one of the most exciting pieces of data to see. What we looked at was our Acadians reading data. I think anyone in education knows that there's something that happens over the summer for kids, and it's called the summer slide or the summer slump, where we get them to a certain level, and when they come back the following school year, they've lost a lot of their progress, and it's well documented in all of education research. But what we were especially excited about, from our kindergarten to first grade this year, there was that typical summer slump that we usually see, which we feel like is attributed to a lot of kindergarten families not realizing fully that, like, hey, my kid's a reader now, we should be reading every day. But when you take a look at the final spring column from last year at our grades 1 through 4, and you look at what happened when they came in as 2nd through 5th graders this year, every single one of them were either at or just above or barely a couple points off from where they left last spring, showing that with all grades but 1, we did not see that typical big summer slide that we often do. And we have worked really hard at Grable for the last 5 or 6 years to offer a reading program at the end of the year where students get to choose books to take home for the summer that are at or near their reading level, with the hope that they'll be reading over the summer. They'll maintain that learning that they had. And we have seen a little bit of that maintenance, but nothing like this year where they all, except for the 1 grade level, held on to their learning from the year prior. And so that was really empowering to our teachers to see, hey, these gains are sticking and we can continue to build upon that. We aren't going to spend the first several months of the year trying to gain back what they had already learned last year. So that was a really exciting data point for us. For map testing, as you know, we no longer use iReady, and we are back to using map testing. So we expected to see some lower scores in the fall than maybe would be reflected on our end of year SBA tests or even on our fall Acadians, simply because it is a new software program for the kids. None of the students that we have right now have ever map tested. It was before their time in school. And so there were a lot of hiccups getting map testing going within the building and things. But also it's just a good kind of starting place for us to know. We expect to see as the year goes on and as they continue to utilize the program, we expect to see a little bit more accurate results of showing what they're capable of. Okay, so if you can jump, Tracy, to the ELA goals page, I'm going to talk about our goals. So the first thing that we have for language arts goal is in the area of writing. We adopted a language arts curriculum called CKLA many years ago, and when we got the first edition, it was really weak in the area of writing. What that led to was teachers on their own looking for ways to teach writing, maybe their favorite things from prior curriculums or from other schools. And there wasn't a lot of calibration or consistency with what was being taught. So I like to use the example with staff. You know, you might love teaching the Oreo essay, and it has the parts of the Oreo and you use it as a thing to hook your kids on. But the teacher that comes after you might teach the hamburger essay, and the teacher that comes after you might teach the 5-paragraph essay. And so kids every year are having to start from scratch with how they're learning to write. And so what is great is since the CKLA company kind of realized and got a lot of feedback on how the writing wasn't up to the standard of what we need to see for kids, they have produced something that's called their writing studio, and it's a new component to their curriculum that came out several years ago. So this summer we had a trainer come and do a training for our staff on how to implement the writing studio so that everyone had that base knowledge that we could build off together. And so we are working this year in PLCs as well to collaborate around the teaching of writing, which is a big lift for our teachers because teachers aren't ones to sit around and wait for someone to come save them, right? And so they've all been doing their best version of writing instruction. And so we're excited though to have common vocabulary so that as kids go from grade level to grade level, what they're hearing about how to write is the same, and they can build upon those things as writers. So we're really excited about that. That's our first language arts goal. Our second one is a carryover goal from last year, and that is that all teachers will be using their reading data, their fall reading data, to plan small group instruction for students, and kids will have reading groups every week. And so that's important because you can level your reading groups for your kids, and they can get your base instruction of the curriculum, but they can also have some time that's focused on right where they're at as readers, and that will allow them to grow. So the number one way to become a better reader is to be reading books at your level. And so by giving teachers the opportunity and the permission to set aside some time each day to be working with kids in small group reading instruction with books at their level and working on targeted skills, we saw some tremendous growth last year with that, and so we'd like to continue that this year. You can move to our math goals page. Another carryover goal from last year is teachers utilizing math screeners. So at the start of the year, we found it really helpful to give kids a little quiz on the power standards from the year before to see where are those gaps, where do we need to fill in things. And so throughout the year, teachers last year were able to have some time, we called it tier time. It's kind of like the what I need time that Haller has, where teachers could say, hey, let's look at these 4 areas where we notice kids are struggling, and let's each of us take on one of those areas, and we'll mix our kids, and then they'll go to whichever area where they need the help, so that a single teacher isn't having to provide 4 opportunities for support, but each teacher can take on one area. And so we saw a lot of success with that. It happened as kind of a requirement last year as a part of our CSIP goal. And then people took it on this year and were super eager to bring that back. We're going to do it, right? And so we were excited to continue that goal because it was so effective. One thing that we're adding, kind of a layer to that, is an additional goal related to interim-based assessments. So the Smarter Balance is our state testing system, and they have some assessments that kids can take periodically throughout the year online, utilizing the same format that they call interim-based assessments. And when they take those, it gives teachers feedback on not only are the kids picking up the content that we're teaching, but are they able to then translate that into the testing system when they see it differently than just on a worksheet. And so those are things that we have known and have been used in pockets, some areas more than others. All teachers in grades 3 through 5 this year will follow a calendar of when to give each of these assessments, and then come together to decide whether the things that they're seeing in their classrooms on their class assessments are aligning, and where we maybe need to change up some of our tier time lessons. So once the math screeners from the start of the year, once we've kind of worked through those skills from the year prior, then we'll move into utilizing our interim-based assessments to plan that instruction. You could go to our culture goals page. The thing that you heard Sarah talk about with calibrating that tier 1 instruction is another theme also for Gray Wolf. So you asked about the swing data, and one thing that we have had a big discussion on recently is John Hattie. He's an educational researcher, and he researched the effect size that different influences have on students' learning. And one of the biggest things, the largest effect size, is collective teacher efficacy. So the idea that the teachers jointly together believe that kids can learn, and also they're working together to help them learn. So when we're looking at swing data, Gray Wolf averages for state test scores were anywhere from 5 to 25% above the state average, depending on grade level and content. With our individual teachers, anywhere from 19 to 45% above the state average, which is huge. So imagine if we could harness that and work together and have that collective teacher efficacy, what we could do for kids. And so we are also going to be spending time in PLCs working on aligning and calibrating our tier 1 instruction. So that's a big goal for us this year. The second culture goal that we have is around teacher resilience and staff resilience. We are doing the same book study that several other schools are doing on the Onward book by Elena Aguilar. And the whole idea is adults, teachers, you give a lot, right? And so finding time to build your own reserves of resiliency is incredibly important because you can only give to a certain point. And when you were giving as an online teacher and a hybrid teacher, all of those things, it really depleted people's resiliency on top of maybe trying to help their own children at home or, work with family job loss and things like that. So we know this is a priority. The way the book is structured, it goes through every month of kind of a teacher's world and what teachers are experiencing at that time of the school year. This month of November, the focus is self-care. And so we met last week and we talked about that chapter. And it's so interesting, the connections, the light bulbs, how many people came and said, boy, I wasn't really sure about this, but this really is hitting home for me. And so that's powerful, knowing that we have an opportunity to impact our culture of our building and people's individual resilience. So we're really excited about that. On our equity goal page, we have this year the district got a grant for an SEL curriculum, social emotional learning curriculum, and it's called Second Step. And so we are helping all of our teachers access those resources so that all students will get 20 lessons this year of SEL through the Second Step curriculum. And then our second equity goal is that we are setting aside time for teachers to work in PLCs to plan their tier time to address those learning gaps. So one of the ways that we've done this, we don't have common planning time at Gray Wolf. We've structured our building schedules a little bit differently. So what we do is we have a standing assembly every Friday morning for 45 minutes. And so that's when we bring in our assemblies. It's when we talk about all the fun things that are happening at Gray Wolf. There's a lot going on. Can I have one more minute?
Had 4 extra.
Thank you.
I'm
Any
just
questions? I can. One more minute. Okay. Anyway, so we are giving teachers that opportunity once a week to have 45 minutes to work together on their PLC times. Our final goal is related to family and community engagement. And we are really excited to have the opportunity to welcome families back into our building this year. So we have planned all kinds of things from just fun family nights to academic family nights. We're having a bring your baby to school night for kids to teach families the importance of early literacy and have their kids involved with it. Tomorrow night, we have a kindergarten family night all about tacos and a book that we're going to share with kids, and they all going to take one home. So anyway, thank you for that extra minute. Any questions?
Questions?
There.
I really appreciate using John Hattie and Onward by Aguilar and as part of your reading, professional reading, to start the discussion, the thought about what you guys are doing. That's important. So
There's a lot of smart people, so we want to
Yeah.
get onto that.
and so I applaud you for that. That's great.
Thank you. Any other questions?
No question.
All right, I'll go ahead and introduce Ned Flater. He is the principal of OPA and DBS, and he's up next. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that was a great report, Jennifer. You could have had one more of my minutes. That was fun. Well, first of all, my focus my reports mostly on Olympic Peninsula Academy. We will have a couple of goals for the Dungeness Virtual School as well. And the reason for that is we share about a little more than 1/3 of our students in the Dungeness Virtual School with the high school, middle school, and elementary schools. So some of our data from there is a little bit skewed because of those sharing times. You know, it's hard to figure out exactly what students are testing on the DVS versus what students are testing on the other schools in terms of their Smarter Balance assessment. Well, let's go ahead and begin with Olympic Peninsula Academy. You know, really where the tire meets the road is three areas. We have our wonderful staff, of which we have 7 certificated teachers that are filling a 4.87 FTE. We only have 1 full-time certificated teacher. The majority of our teachers either serve as a 0.8 or a 0.67. And we have within that staff, we also have 2 enrichment coaches and 2 paras that are assigned one-on-one. We also have an administrative support person who works in our main office, and we have 2 custodians that are assigned to the facility over there. The second pole of this tripod is our students. In OPA, we have approximately 135 students, of which, when you boil down to the FTE, about 105 FTE. And then the third, which I think is really kind of sets the standard for our district, is our very involved families. As many of you know, Olympic Peninsula Academy is a shared experience between the student, the staff member, and most importantly, their family member. Part of the contract we have with our family members is that they take about 3/5 of the student's instruction that we cannot do because we have them in a limited capacity. Our core instruction happens on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and our enrichment instruction or elective instruction happens on Mondays and Wednesdays. Lab and extra labs do occur on Fridays, but they are as needed. So our parents are picking up about 30 hours of instruction to support our students. And really, the results are stunning. When we think about our Smarter Balance assessment test from last spring, in ELA, not only did we test well above the state requirements in pretty much every grade band from 3rd to 8th, but we tested significantly higher above the district. Now, granted, you might say, well, you have 16 students in your class per classroom, and that is an advantage. Smaller classrooms do tend to produce, you know, a little bit more capability within the classroom setting. But you also have to understand that Olympic Peninsula Academy teaches approximately 2 hours of core instruction for ELA per student per week. So when we think about the contrast there, the successes there are really built upon the relationship that are established between parents, student, and staff members. And that trifecta brings about great results. Now, we don't have perfect results. When we take a look at our math, Smarter Balance assessments from last year, you'll note that particularly in our 4th and our 6th grade, we scored lower than our district counterparts and lower than our state counterparts. Whereas in 7th and 8th grade, we've scored significantly higher. You might ask, what's the reason for that? Well, evaluating the data, I came away with this, and I evaluated it from two perspectives. One, I evaluated it quantitatively, what does the number say? And 2, qualitatively, what actually occurred on the ground. Coming back off of COVID, we had, for the first time, in my recent understanding of OPA, where we had combined classes. So our 4th and 5th grade students work together in one combined class. Our K and 1 work together, and our 2nd and 3rd work together. And I do believe that created a little bit of an effect that building back those core fundamentals in those early primary grades affected some of the math outcomes there. But as we take a look, what happened in 7th and 8th grade then? Why were the numbers so much greater in the math there? Again, evaluating the quantitative and the qualitative data, I came away with this. First of all, what happened last year under the former principal, Rick Abaney, is they instituted an additional couple of hours of math and science on our enrichment days for the students to attend. So this gave them very targeted instruction in those areas in the 7th and 8th grade, and the results were remarkable. You can look at the data yourself, they shot right up. Again, we brought in, though, OPA is built on this partnership relationship that we have with our parents. We meet with the parents very regularly, face to face. Every week, parents are getting notified, either via email, voicemail, telephone, direct face-to-face contact. And another thing I think that is an advantage in OPA is that our parents are required to provide volunteer hours to be in that program. Each parent spends approximately 30 hours of volunteer time in the school serving in the lunchroom, as lunchroom recess, helping kids out in the classroom. That's a significant advantage to that program because we get parent buy-in right away, and they have a direct visibility on what their student is doing in that setting as well. Some big advantages there for the program. Let's take a look at some of the cultural issues that we are bringing back into the program. Really, if I go back to when I started in OPA, we had one building that was fairly confined in one area. Most people left us alone because they didn't know what we did over there. But our building was taken down in the community school. We were moved over to portables. That changed our culture dramatically. The first year that I served over there in that setting really broke us apart. A strength of OPA is that K through 12, those students intermingle throughout the day. Our older students look out after our younger students. It's a very community kind of a familial feel over there. And those portables, we've really had to work hard to rebuild back that culture. So what have we done? Well, building off of what occurred last year, we too have brought on the book Onward, and we're using that as our professional development study this year. We've brought back in more family events. We just finished a fall festival, and we're planning for the winter festival. Students there, just like students in the other buildings, they have dances and family get-togethers. But I kind of think it's special in OPA because not only are those families sending their students there, but many times those families come to those events, 100%. And for instance, one of the cultural items we have there, has been a tradition there a long time, is our Otter Day. And I think this year we had more families show up than we've ever had in our recent history. And I think part of that was that they really just wanted to get back into school post-COVID without the restrictions. So when we take a look at this, what are our goals moving forward? Obviously with DLA, the old saying, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. But really, do we want to just stay stagnant? And the answer to that is no. So as we take a look at DLA scores, how are we going to build upon those? Well, we've already inculcated reading groups in their enrichments, and when we think about our elective programs that occur on Monday and Wednesday, those build on the core programs as well. So we've done a much more dynamic job of taking a look at what we're doing on those enrichment days and tying it back into the core days so that we actually have a real effect of that. Obviously with the math, there's a bit of a challenge there. I do believe, building on what occurred last year, those extra hours for those lab days are pretty important. Another thing that we're doing this year is we're going to grow an organic capability for our SPED. We have no organic special education ability to our building. We go and borrow it from the other buildings. Now this year, I think has been a bellwether year for us because not only do we have McKinney-Vento representation at least once a week, but we also have HICAP representation once a week. And we look at our numbers, do we really need that organic capability? Yes, we do. As you take a look at the SPED numbers across the spectrum of our district, OPA has the same percentage of special education students as any of our buildings without an organic capability to address those issues. All right, wrapping up here. So just when we were getting interested here. Any questions for me? I can speak to these numbers all night.
Question.
I would just comment my little stars. I put that parental involvement is amazing. And then talking about, it's kind of like a one room schoolhouse kind of atmosphere. We had K-12, but that parent involvement,
Right, it is striking. It does set a standard, I believe, for our district. I do want to make one mention here. I didn't mention much about Dutchess Virtual School. That's not because it's fallen off my radar or any stretch of imagination. We have 4 certificated teachers, that's 1 down from last year. But we did maintain the same level of student enrollment, even though we went to 4 certificated teachers. We don't have some of the same results, and you can look at the numbers yourself as we do across the spectrum of our district. And why is that? And I would say 2 reasons. We don't have the same level of parent involvement, and we don't have the same level of direct involvement from our staff, even though they do due diligence in meeting with those kids when they can. We have to be careful of that program. What it's going to become is probably different than what it is today. And that's a larger discussion than this gathering here, I think. Other questions? Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, I'm Mark Harris, I'm the middle school principal, and so let's get interesting right away, real quick. The data that drove us in terms of what driving us right now, what we're doing. One, we've got the behavioral information from last spring. We've got performance on the SBAs, both math and ELA. Those are the ones we're paying most attention to. So what did we draw out of those? Well, from math, know this, we've been looking at math data for our building for quite a while. One of the challenges we've had, we do expect 6th graders to not perform to their best as they are transferring from a place where they do math for 2.5 hours a day to a place where they get it for 55 minutes. So we expect a bit of a drop off, but we were recognizing that it isn't entirely that. It had to do with curriculum. The curriculum we were using really works great for elementary. It really was designed for a longer chunk of time per day than the one we were moving to. So it made sense philosophically as well as the curriculum to move to what the secondary school, high school was doing, which is to move to Carnegie. So our teachers this year, for the very first time, are using Carnegie full year out. They're being trained with the folks from that curriculum company, and they're going to do that with Fidelity this year. As they go through, they've also been asked not only to follow through with those components, but to help the rest of the staff understand their role and responsibility around mathematics, because it's not just the math teachers that have to teach math. Everybody has a responsibility when it comes to mathematics. So they've identified the priority standards, and that's a language that's been used in this district to identify the things that are being assessed by the state. And they've passed those on to each department, who have taken the last few professional developments to look at their standards and talk in their departments around their curriculum, so that coming in 2nd semester, when they pass out their syllabi to every kid, not only will it have their content standards in there, but it will have math and English standards in there that they address within the content through that semester. So parents will know math and English are being taught everywhere. They're not just in those classes that are labeled that way. So a big step for us in that direction. We, like some of the other places, are looking for assessments to use all the time. We'll be using the IBAs as well, that interim-based assessment. So we'll keep moving forward on that piece. Move along to English. They're in year 2. This is their first year without a trainer. And we moved to my perspective, same concept, same philosophical shift to move away from what the elementary was doing and make this the first stop for secondary. And the teachers in this building have a history with English, even though they too are cutting down to an hour a day, and those 6th graders drop off in their performance. If you look from grade 6 to 8, they are on a steady climb, and even here they went from being below standard, below the state average, to by the time they got to 8th grade, those teachers do such an awesome job that they're a full 20% above the state average. So they're a group that, frankly, we as a building trust as they look at things, and we're looking for what they do with this year's curriculum. Their next drive is to go, hey, wait a minute, this thing that we're flying, we're all going to the same destination. We want kids to be able to be walking out for Aaron and Casey in graduation, ready for their pathway, ready for their life, to make the choices about the education they choose for themselves, to pursue their goals and ambitions. That's not changing. But this thing during COVID, we've needed to modify some stuff. So for the math department, changing curriculums, and the English department, a bit like changing engines perhaps, but they managed to pull that off, and we're moving forward. So where do we go from here? Well, the librarian that we lost to Donna, who has become our professional development creator in a technological world, meant I got to replace the librarian. And I pulled one of our best English teachers in that role. And she came with a recognition looking at the data that she herself was collecting and her colleague were, and they were the 8th grade team that did so well, is we're having a bunch of kids who are struggling with reading, things that we had anticipated in the past that they would have mastered by the time they got to us. So she specifically talked with Shelley and her team about what sort of materials we could use to potentially bridge the gap for those kids and pick up the pieces in a tier 2 model so that the tier 1 keeps launching forward with the same success they've had in the past. And when I talked to the department chair today, I said, so, I'm really proud of the English department, you guys do a great job of that growth. She goes, yeah, but we're not done. We haven't gotten to where we're gonna get to. So they to keep those things ahead of them. On the other front, obviously, we're middle school, so we have an issue with behavior. Always. It is that age where kids do a couple of things. One, they express themselves as individuals and they push toes across the line. The other place is they begin to pay more attention to kids than they do to adults. So that's an ongoing piece for us on how do we teach them to be those wonderful human beings they're going to be at graduation so that they're successful. Well, for us, we too have a curriculum that we use through Wolfpack, which is our weekly sessions. We use Habitudes at the moment. We're in our final year of that. We'll evaluate this year whether we're going to continue that or perhaps we'll be using a similar one in the high school, or maybe we'll find a direction in a different way. The other part on that behavioral front, we also work with PBIS and we try to define what's expected of kids. We try to make it very clear and explicit. Well, we learned something during COVID. We've got these things. We have these shows we can put on, so to speak. Well, there you go. So part of what the show we put on for kids now is we realized we can use Teams. We're quite proficient at that. And so we started the school year with a Teams live show to teach all the expectations in our building over the course of the first 3 days. We followed that through with Veterans Day. We had an assembly. Went great. If you didn't know, we practiced. We had to go in on the Monday beforehand and teach everybody what was expected. And we used a combination of the technology we have at our availability and realizing we got to teach kids from square one exactly what's expected. We're starting to move in the right direction. Are we there? No. Are middle schoolers still brash and inappropriate? Absolutely they are, but we're now moving in the right direction where the teachers themselves can say, well, they're better than last year when we were just coming back from COVID. So we continue to expect that behavioral piece, while they will be who they are as irreverent human beings, we're going to continue to move in the right direction on that front. For us on the cultural piece, we made another shift. We recognize that during COVID, student mental health and other issues became really important for us to pay attention to. So we started paying attention to CASEL and its parts of what it is to be socially, emotionally developed. And we identified kids who might fall in the cracks because of that issue. We're using some of our LAP money to focus on kids that we think otherwise might struggle at the middle school level. And we're going to use the math and English performance to determine whether that's successful or not. Right now, 2 different paras have 2 classes each that are entirely their caseloads. They go to their success or CASEL class, if you like, and then they track the kids and their performance through the rest of their working day to see how they're being successful. So I'll be happy to report later in the year on, fingers crossed, that may be a successful way to go about approaching this problem with middle school kids. The other one that drives us is our equity lens. We try to pay attention to the fact that everything as we rebuild what it is to be a brick and mortar school, you have to be honest with yourself. Some of the things we fall into are because we've always done it that way. At this point, before we do anything, we always ask, is this the best way to do it? And are we serving all kids before we do it? So that's a piece for us that will continue to drive and filter everything we do. On the family front, hey, we just had conferences. This is where we communicate with our families and ask them what they want. Do you want to have it in person? Do you want online? What would you like? We are so split in the community. We literally had half who wanted every day to be in person and the other half who wanted every day to be online. Well, so we did one of each. As it turned out, we got nearly 1,100 conferences accomplished in those 2 days. So pretty impressive group. That's the largest number that staff has seen in terms of participation when they looked at their back records in terms of performance. So I think we're moving in the right direction there. We, like Ned, had one of our first family functions that you might consider historical. We had our fine arts night, and that was an invitation to families to come to that. Takeaway though from parents was this time, hey, you showed, I got to come with my kid who's one of your kids. That was great. What about my elementary school kids? So it's kind of dropped at the end there. We're going to try and see if we can have a fine arts day in the spring where we target our 2 elementary to bring them up and show them what we've got going in our building so they can start to look at the electives that may be ahead of them. Other piece, tutorials on that tab. We've got a couple of pieces again. A teacher who's using math, he's starting to use Teams. He has tutoring sessions twice a week where you can book an appointment online. He does it from his house, sits down with individuals or small groups that have issues going on. Pretty impressive way to go about doing it. Today in Professional Development Monday, the staff wrote job descriptions for volunteers to come back and work. And that's what we're at. Questions, all yours. Go ahead, Larry.
I was just gonna say, that, well, in my past life, I had a degree in integrating technology in the school, so using Teams for assembly information and then the tutoring.
Yeah.
I think that's a fantastic use of the technology, and that's kind of what it all promised to be back when it started.
Yeah.
And then we migrated into what we got today, but I'm really glad to see you guys are trying to utilize that as a way to contact the students.
Yep.
And parents, so I think that's great.
I just had a clarification, just it was really intriguing when you said, when the report says, we'll seek out opportunities to impact the community culture around math. What are you thinking about with that?
At the moment, I'm trying to twist the arms of my math department to host a family come to school night. I actually purchased for them to get them to whet their appetite, math related games to play with their kids when they want that break from something different to try and get kids engaged in that. And the intent at the moment, and they're gonna probably twist this on me because they're smarter people than I am, but was to invite families in for a game night. And we'd be using those math games to play. So, but for us, frankly, to be honest, long-term, you look math, we as a community, and you represent that community, we have to change our cultural thinking around math and just make it something that every child is expected to perform in. You can't say, I can't do math or I'm not good at math. Everybody can do math. It doesn't matter. You just have to put in the energy and the effort, and it's hard work, but it's supposed to.
Thank you.
Other questions? Caleb, Sarah, any specific, you two are the most recent to have been in that arena of the room, I would assume. But any questions from your perspective?
No, I just think it's like really impressive how much like improvement you're making with the students that you have in 6th to 8th grade, like this video down shows.
Yeah. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right, without that. Aaron Fox from the high school.
All right.
All right, so I was putting in a lot of thought to why we do our CSIP plans. Obviously, it's for school improvement, but for us at the high school, such a huge focus is what we want students to walk away from Scone High School with. It's all about getting our kids to graduation and making sure that those kids can read, they can write, they can communicate effectively, and they have a good general knowledge for everything we've taught. How we do that is through the courses we offer, obviously, the staff that we have, our families, our students, but also our high school and beyond plans. So high school and beyond plans are a tool that actually starts at the middle school with students starting to take some interest in skills inventories. Those same assessments continue into high school, and every year students are working on a high school and beyond plan. This is a requirement to graduate in the state of Washington. It's also an incredibly valuable tool because it helps to make sure that every single student has a tailored career goal for them that they not only have expressed interest in, but also they have some assessment that they've gone through that has dictated, yeah, that's a good career choice for you. They also learn about what training they might need post-secondary or what education they may need to continue with. In that, they also make sure they're meeting graduation requirements, they're meeting their graduation pathways, and then also we target students who may need extra intervention in academics and how they would go about getting that so they can graduate. Whether that's in 4 years, 5 years, or 6 years, we want every single student to be able to walk across that stage. So what does our data show? Our data shows we're doing all right compared to the state, but that honestly, we have a lot of room for improvement, and we're excited about that because it means that we can continue to grow. It means that our teachers have a goal of moving forward with that and how we're going to do that. So you kind of see our general data, we have disaggregated data where we've kind of identified some needs, especially around our students with disabilities and our McKinney-Vento students and our low income students. When we look at our graduation data, so these are students that are on track. For example, if you're a current sophomore, you have 6 credits. If you're a junior, you have 12. And if you're a senior, you have 18. So you're moving forward. And we notice, especially when looking at the graduation data, that our class of 2024, those are our juniors, they need some extra intervention. They're a bit lower than we'd expect to see. So what are we going to do about that? We're continuing with our homeroom program this year, which not only does academic intervention, some SEL support, works on that high school and beyond plan, it also offers students the opportunity to earn additional credits each year. So throughout their 4 years in high school, they can earn up to 2 credits by participating in homeroom. We also are looking for ways to increase our spots in our SOS, Swim Option School program, which we use for credit recovery, as well as working with our counseling team to award competency credits earlier to make sure that students know that they can do this. So when students take the SBA exam, if they score a level 3 or level 4, they can actually earn competency credits. So for example, if you earn a 3 in math, you can get a half credit of math. You can also get elective credits by doing well on those and the science assessment. And a lot of times those extra incentives are just what students need to feel that little bit of hope to keep them moving forward in their journey towards graduation. When you get behind, sometimes it feels impossible. We don't want it to feel that way. We want students, even when they're behind, to feel like, you know what, I can catch up and I can do this. For our ELA goal, we have newish curriculum, just like Mr. Harris was saying, we're using my perspectives. And so our goals this year for both English and math are really to give our teachers the time necessary to make sure that they understand how the curriculum aligns with the standards and what pacing is necessary to make sure that those standards are taught each and every year. So that the time students graduate, like I said, they can read, they can write, they communicate, and they can do those basic math skills. For math specifically, to expand on that a bit, not only do we want our teachers to do that work, but they've really identified that we need to do that work 6-12. We need to really incorporate our middle school to ensure, because math is so sequential, that they're meeting the standards they need in each course before they move forward to the next one. So students are getting what they need in pre-algebra to move forward to algebra. They're getting what they need in algebra to move forward to geometry and so on. And then moving on, kind of switching gears to SEL, we're continuing to work with our Character Strong curriculum in homerooms. We did it a little differently this year. We gave both staff and students the opportunity to express what they wanted to delve into in those SEL standards, and then are really tailor making the Character Strong lessons around those individual grade needs. And then we're also really still pushing the need for trauma-informed and SEL practices just in daily classroom life. Mr. Lanning is going to talk a little bit about 2 of our other goals.
Okay, so all of these things are wonderful, but they don't always happen on time. And so MTSS, multi-tiered systems and supports, that's the glue that holds things together, particularly as we come back from COVID, and as we are still in the midst of this time as well. So the first piece is, the goal. So we want to give teachers the skills and resources to implement the UDL strategies and supports, but we've been doing that as a district for a little while. So we want to go the next step, and teachers have been asking, what does that look like in my classroom? What does that look like in math? What does that look like in English? So we are having our UDL specialists, those that are involved in UDL work for the district as well, actually working with those teachers. So whether it's working with a science teacher or working with an English teacher, they are actually partaking and participating in some collaborative work with that particular UDL specialist. So that's really been really powerful. The other piece to this is during the first few weeks of our school, we actually had these conversations. All students will review behavior expectations through their classes. We did that through homeroom. We also, Erin and I also really spelled out what the expectations for coming back to school would look like, and we put PowerPoints together. And then we provided lessons for the teachers, and that went really well. And And continuing that throughout, we're gonna be coming back from break, and so things get forgotten, so let's have opportunities for kids to remember. And that also goes with, checking in with students as well. So each week, staff will be given the opportunity to report on students in need. And that's just a form survey that they take. And then those students then get talked about at our building leadership teams, which includes administrators, includes counselors, includes support staff. And that becomes an opportunity to give them supports as well. And then the last part of this is, as Erin talked about with SEL, with homeroom, all students also have access to working on their high school and beyond plans. Since they stay in that same homeroom for those 4 years, that also builds trust with the teacher in there and then with the students as well. So that's MTSS. And then there's one last one that I want to talk about, and that's parent-family engagement. What we came to was we need to start having these conversations. We're new to, at least I am, particularly to the high school. Erin is new in this role, and we need to have conversations with family and community about what is going to be the best way to communicate. So we have a multi-pronged approach to communication. That includes social media, that includes emails, that includes in person, that includes Teams, and what's going to work best for that. But we also have other people. We have ASB, we have clubs, we have boosters, and they also have ways that they communicate. So it's trying to figure out what's going to be best moving forward so we can get these things out to the families and do it in a way that is going to mean the most and be the most productive.
Thank you so much. Any questions?
We're short on time, but just real quick, I'm really glad to hear you talking about combining, well, basically combining universal design for learning with the professional learning communities. I think I heard, all the levels, and I think that UDL to me was a real attractive and I think effective model for equity and learning and developing that social emotional culture, positive social emotional culture. So
Yeah.
good job.
The other piece I would say with that, and when I was in my previous position, we need UDL for adult learners as well.
Yeah, yep.
Yes.
Including board members and
Yes.
parents.
Caleb, did you have a question?
Caleb, myself.
I just wanted to ask, how is like the effectiveness of the SEL programs like measured over like the school year?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we'll survey you all twice a year. So we're hoping to do that first one before winter break, and then we'll do the second one before you walk across that stage this spring.
All right, great. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.